Hi everybody, my name is Craig and this is my YouTube channel, The Last Page. Today I thought I'd do my July wrap up and we'll get straight into it because there's a few books. So the first book I have is Staring at the Sun by Julian Barnes. This is my second novel by Julian Barnes. This one was a little bit different, but it follows the story of Jean and her son mostly, but you start off with Jean in World War II when she's a young girl, and later on she meets her husband, and then the story moves along a little bit and you find Jean when she's older and she leaves her husband and brings up her son by herself. The story takes a little bit of a weird turn about 3/4 in that I didn't expect, but it didn't take anything away from the story and I enjoyed it. And there's a lot in this book, even though it's only a small book, but there's a lot about men and women, a lot about experience and wisdom, and a fair bit about mortality as well. And I enjoyed it. It's well worth a read for the content and the issues it brings up. The next book I have is Tinkers by Paul Harding, and this book won the Pulitzer Prize in 2010. And this is the story of George, who is dying. He's surrounded by his family in his home that he's lived with his wife, and in this book George remembers his past. He remembers his father Howard, and it's written in a flow of consciousness sort of way, and I didn't mind reading it, but it didn't really do that much for me. And it's about the essence of time, it's about dying, it's about remembering your life. But I don't know, there was something, I don't know if it was the way it was written, just didn't do that much for me. And I'm still looking for a Pulitzer Prize novel that I really love, and I haven't come across one yet. I still haven't read a lot of them, but I'm making my way through them, and so far this one didn't do it for me either, but it's worth a read and it's different. The next book I have is The One and Only Ivan by Kathleen Applegate, and this was awesome. This is, I think, young adult or children's novel, but everyone should read this book. It's about Ivan, who is a gorilla in a shopping mall, and he's one of the animals that live there. He's been there for a long time. He was the first one. There's also an elephant named Stella, and there is a stray dog that lives with them too. And this book, it's sad, but it's beautiful, and I think everyone should read this book. But there was one part, there are actually many parts in this book that I like, but we have a dog, and this part in the book just made so much sense, and it's so true, and I'll just read it quickly. By the way, Bob is the stray dog that came to live with them, and he lives there. He sneaks in and out, and he likes to sleep on Ivan's stomach at night. Bob's tail makes me dizzy and confused. It has meanings within meanings, like human words. I am sad, it says. I am happy, it says. Beware, I may be tiny, but my teeth are sharp. It's great, and it is told from Ivan's point of view, and there are so many good descriptions of animals, and it's definitely pick it up and read it. It's quick. It's not that hard to read, and there are some pictures in here too. So they just add to the story, but definitely the one and only Ivan by Catherine Applegate. I think I pronounced that wrong first, sorry. Next I have We'll Always Have Paris by Ray Bradbury. This is a collection of short stories. A lot of the stories in here are just centered around moments of life, and he tells them from maybe an odd view at times, but they're just moments in life, and the way he tells them, you feel like you're in that moment. And I really enjoyed all of the short stories in this one, and I look forward to reading more Ray Bradbury. Next I have In the Miso Soup by Ryu Murakami. This book is the story of Kenji. Kenji is a guide. He guides tourists through the red light district in Tokyo, and he's hired by Frank, an American tourist, to do that. At the same time, there are murders happening, and Kenji starts to suspect Frank. This is a disturbing book and scary, but if I had to describe it, it would be an encounter with a psychopath and the relationship between a psychopath and their hostage. And in this book, I think probably so far the best description of malevolence. I'm pretty sure I stuffed that, but anyway, it was very good, and I read that paragraph a couple of times because it was really good. But so far, I think I've read the audition by Ryu Murakami, and this one, In the Miso Soup, and I haven't been disappointed with either of them. So if you get a chance to read any of his books, it's probably a good idea if you like this sort of stuff. The next book I have is The Dying Animal by Philip Roth. This is the first book of Philip Roth that I have read, and I've heard a fair amount of talk about him, and I was at the bookshop not long ago and I decided I wanted to read one of his books, so I just went for one of his smaller ones, and this happened to be the one. And this is the story of David, who is a lecturer at a university, and for a while he has been sleeping with one of his students at the end of the semester when they're no longer his student, and he's been doing this for quite a long time. When he comes across Consuela, who is his student, and then at the end of the semester he does what he usually does, but he is not ready for how much Consuela changes him, and the book carries on from there. But there's a lot in this book. There's a lot about sexual revolution, the power the opposite sex has over us, obsession, and dying, and I quite enjoyed it. It was a small book, and I want to read some more Philip Roth books now, and hopefully I will get to do that in the near future, and yeah, looking forward to reading more. Next up we have Memories of My Melancholy Halls. Having problems with English today. By Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I had a lot of firsts this month, and this was another one. This is my first Marquez book, and I really enjoyed it. It's about this guy. I can't remember his name, and maybe I should be making videos today. It's about a bachelor. I don't think you ever find out what his name is from memory, but it tells his story. At the beginning, he is turning 90 and he decides that he wants to sleep with a virgin, and that's something obviously he's never done, and he decides at 90 that it's time, and he often visits those establishments. So he rings up the one that he usually goes to, and he speaks to the lady that runs it, and she organizes it for him. But then when he meets this girl, which he ends up calling Delgardina, Dina, I'm not sure on the pronunciation, but hopefully that's close. Things change for him, and I guess he falls in love with her, and the story progresses from there, and you find out a bit about his past and how he was almost married at one stage, and how life changed for him. And it's a short story. I quite enjoyed this book. It wasn't, I guess from the title you probably think it's about something different, but it's about love, and maybe I think it's his first love, and he's only experiencing it at 90 years of age, and it's quite nice. The next book I have is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, and this was a reread for me, and I'd seen this book maybe a couple of months ago, and I resisted buying it, but I saw it again last week in a bookshop, and there was no resistance this time because it's just so nice, and the back, and I like it because inside the writing is quite big but not too big, and I reread this and I still really like the story. It follows Montag and his discovery of books, which leads to a crisis in his life because he is a fireman who its mission is to burn all books, but it's about the civilization or society at that time, and I really enjoyed rereading this. And if you haven't read Fahrenheit 451, you should definitely go and find this book and give it a read, and I will probably read this again sometime in the future again, so looking forward. The last book I have is Just After Sunset by Stephen King. This is a collection of short stories, and these were all written, I think he said it's like 2006, 2008, and I gave this 5 stars on Goodreads because I don't know if it's just the right time, but all of these short stories I really enjoyed, and some of them, I don't know if they were supposed to be scary, but a lot of them were very touching for me as well. There's a couple of stories sort of centered around 9/11 in their way, and I found those ones to be very good. And all the stories are quite different. There's a story about afterlife. There's a story about a wife who receives a phone call from her dead husband. There's a story about OCD. There's just a variety of stories in here, and for me it gave me a array of feelings, and from disturbing to quite touching and sad. And I don't know if that was his intention, but that's what happened when I read this book, and I highly recommend giving this a read, even if you don't like Stephen King. Well, that's all I have for my July wrap up. I hope that gave you some insight into what I read this month, and if you have any questions about any of the books, leave a comment below and I'll reply, and I'll leave some other ways to follow me in the description, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye.